Welcome to the Building Doctor Show with Jens Johansson.
All right. Welcome to the Building Doctor Show. I am your host, Jens Johansson. Glad to see you here to learn more about your buildings. Today is going to be a fun one. It is May Mental Health Awareness Month, and this is what we're going to try to do. We're going to try to bring some awareness to mental health in communities. We're not going to be able to fix everything, but instead of talking to you about building tips, maintenance, management, loans, etc., today we're going to be discussing your community's well-being. So we are super excited to have Dr. Rebecca Resnik, a licensed psychologist, author, speaker, and mental health expert as our guest today. She's also a condo owner and board member. So she is speaking from your perspective. So in this episode, we're going to be walking through mental health awareness, and you'll have a chance to ask your questions of Dr. Resnik free of charge. Welcome, Rebecca. Please tell us a little bit about yourself and why you wanted to be on the Building Doctor Show.
Okay, Jens, am I all good with respect to the mute and the video button?
Yes, we can hear you and see you.
Oh, okay. Hi, everybody. So I love this idea of bringing mental health into the idea of how do we keep successful, safe condo associations and condo communities. And yes, I have 3 condos, 2 are offices, 1 I lived in when I was single. And community living is really tough, and having a little bit of a understanding about some of the mental health issues that we're all facing can help all of that go a lot more smoothly.
Awesome. The theme, again, from the mental health angle is we want to move from a policing action that we hear so much about, how to shut it down, how to lock it down, how to use the votes and close these people out, to one of understanding and one of nurture, and to actually help these people through some of this extra anxiety of living in a condominium, going through a condominium repair process. And we're excited to bring this to you today. So as a quick intro to help us tailor our answers to the audience, we're going to run a quick poll. We'll find out where you're from and what position you have in the association that you manage. And let's see, while that's running, we've got some disclaimers. So this show is free. Put away your credit cards. We aren't selling anything. And this show is definitely for educational content only. We're not giving legal, financial, engineering, or psychological advice. And I'm not a medical doctor. We're just people on the internet trying to help you run your buildings better. We've helped thousands of people with their building problems, and we've seen what worked and what didn't when it comes to restoring and running condos. And we want to share that with you in hopes that it'll benefit you. And do us a favor, if any of this stuff is resonating and you like it, give it a share, give it a thumbs up. Even if you're listening to it post live, hit that thumbs up button, and that helps share the news. And of course, stick around for the Q&A at the end. We'll answer as many questions as we can in the hour, and then add the rest to the next show. Stay tuned for a link to schedule a free one-on-one call with me or Dr. Resnik. We'll start calling her Rebecca here to be a little bit less formal soon enough. But Ben, the producer, will be monitoring the chat, and Rebecca and I will go through the Q&A panel at the end of the show. So we'll also be doing a raffle giveaway as usual, so stay tuned for that. So let's get back to poll results and see where everybody is. Share results. We've got everybody in Washington today. Managers, board members, curious people. You're hearing it from the newsletter and others. Have you been involved in a repair project? Yes. Half of you in a big one. No. Well, get ready for it. It's coming. No, I'm joking. But okay, that's a good, lots of board members and managers. Okay, perfect. All right, let's get into it. Next slide. So today's agenda, we'll briefly cover these, but then we'll hit them one slide at a time. Stress. Why is stress on the rise? We live in this kind of virtual world now, so things can be a little bit more keyboard warrior-ish. We do have some mental trends that we're going to talk about. And then just repair work in general can be stressful and anxiety producing. We also have an aging population and dealing with dementia or pre-dementia, things like that. We can talk about that. And then just solutions and how we can try to help you make this a better process. So let's see. In our pre-show, not pre-show, but a few days prior, doing our research with Rebecca, she brought some history to me that was really interesting. So Rebecca, could you kind of take us through a little bit of the Reagan era, in the state-run mental hospitals, and kind of walk us through this type of stuff? When did these things start happening? Reagan was early 80s, right? So give us a little bit of that background.
I'm from the early 70s, so I remember the Gipper. But what happened during the Reagan era was a big movement to deinstitutionalize people. So before, the 80s, if you had a disability, a mental health problem, if you had autism, you were pretty much either at home, kind of in a basement or an attic, or you were in an institution. And now we have people out in the community, which is great. But of course, a lot of those folks need some kind of supported living. And a condo really does work for them because they can have independence, can have community, but maybe some of the things they wouldn't be able to do, like, home repairs and such, are handled through the community. And so you have a big shift where the personality and population of our condo and apartment buildings have changed a lot. And we have, a lot of folks now who are living independently who wouldn't have been able to years ago, thanks to technology and support animals and things like, social worker, organizations like the ARC, where these people, are getting just a bit of support so they can manage living independently. But, of course, sometimes for a condo board to try to figure out, well, how do we serve these people? How do we all get along? And importantly, of course, how do we do repairs when we might have, one condo with a vet who has PTSD and can't handle the loud noises. One person may have autism, one person may have dementia and be really terrified of like strange people being around. As a condo board member, I know we're handling a lot of these really complicated issues. Shout out to Michael, our condo board executive director, if you're out there.
Awesome. Michael gets a shout out. What is a taste of how this isn't in our bylaws and governing documents of how to do this. It's this hidden theme or this underlying current that as a board member, I'm waking up to and realizing, oh, wow. Maybe 15, 20, 30% needs some extra help. What am I supposed to do with this? How have you and Michael figured this out?
Yeah. Well, fortunately, I'm talking with Michael about an office condo, but yeah, I do own a residential one as well. And I think for a lot of people, the issue of an aging population is really a significant one. Back in the day, we really didn't have people who were in, their 90s who were still living independently. So how do we support those folks? And at the end, when we get to the solutions section, I'll have some resources for you so we can hopefully get you with some ideas going about how to support your elders, as well as people with physical disabilities and such.
Yeah, neat. Kind of the second bullet here is, do you think we now have a better handle on defining disabilities or recognizing and diagnosing disabilities, and just kind of across the board? Or is there a surge in that diagnosis percentage, or do we just have a better handle on it? Or because then that kind of, well, I have this disability, so I can get some subsidized housing, or I can get some care brought to me, or I can get some things as a part of this treatment. Has there been a rise of this?
There is a rise in disability purely for the reason that our population is aging, and all of us, as we get older, I'm about to turn 50 and my body does not work as well as it used to. So the older we are, the higher our risk of both physical disability, visual and auditory impairment. Our eyes go, our ears go, our balance goes, our mobility goes, but also the older we are, the higher our risk of dementia. And so we have a population that is much needier. But again, we have a lot of folks out in the community who just weren't 50 years ago. We have
Right.
people who, survive being born severely premature. We have people who survive car accidents and, war wounds who never would have been around, years ago, or they would
Sure.
have passed on very quickly, but now they're back in the community and we all have to figure out how to support them and get along.
Right. And that third bullet, the lure of no maintenance and upkeep of a house makes condos seem to be a great place. So yeah, okay. Neat. That was helpful to me on the history when we were prepping. But stress is on the rise. There was the latest article in U.S. Department of Labor. 83% of workers reported work-related stress. So that's not just home-related, but that's work-related. And stress is both a physical and mental health concern. But, we've got all these things beating down on us, whether it's work or the economy or the pandemic of a couple of years ago or the 24-hour news cycle or just normal community stress of living in a high density and busy. Is stress on the rise?
Stress is on the rise big time. And I mean, in a condo community, it only takes one yappy dog to set off the stress on the whole floor, one leaking ceiling or pipe. But stress is really on the rise. And it's unfortunate because this movement towards technology and cell phones and virtualization has really not been good for our mental health. Human beings were meant to be social. We were meant to get together, church, eating dinner together, singing together, playing together, and all those things that relieved our stress and developed that sense of community have really eroded from our society. Unfortunately, add in that wages haven't kept up with inflation.
Sure.
And there's a kind of a meanness in our culture now that I'm not going to say it wasn't there, but at least it was a little bit hidden. But now we can blast all of our nastiest thoughts out to people anytime and egg each other on. So yeah, there's a lot of ugliness out there, and that is raising people's stress and probably making them more difficult to deal with in terms of, condo boards or telling everybody, hey, it's our third water shut off of the week, that kind of thing. People can get really irritable when they're stressed.
Yeah. So I was listening to Lewis Howe's podcast today, and he was talking to somebody about mental health conditions, and they were talking about aggression and depression. Are those, and he didn't answer this question. My question comes up. Are those the same side of the stress coin? So if you're extroverted, maybe it comes out in aggression. If you're introverted, it comes out as depression, or am I mixing things?
Jens, that's like deep. Wow. Well done.
I work with a lot of community condo boards.
I'll bet you do. Yeah, I bet you see a lot of very stressed out, unhappy people. When your building is not passing safety codes, that's a big stress. Yeah, I mean, it's all negative affect. It's all these really bad feelings, and for a lot of males, they express sadness or frustration or feeling, unhappy, inadequate, hurt feelings. That'll come out as like an angry response, whereas women will report more feeling like sad and depressed. It really hasn't been that long that we've kind of recognized that it's mental health and physical health are all tied in together. 2 generations ago, everybody just drank themselves to death. Everybody was alcoholics.
Stiff upper lip or something like that.
Right. And they all died, like early of heart attacks and, were awful to their kids. And so, I mean, I think things are getting better. It's all a question of, how are we dealing with this, because they certainly had tons of stress, back in the day when you would expect like not all of your children would survive. It's just different now. But at least we're talking about it, which is better than the way it used to be.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So the edginess or the pokiness, is that on the rise since kind of social media where you could comment on people's things? So kind of 2011 or, that sort of thing, or
the good old days.
Yeah.
It's been really bad for teenagers. Concept and mental health. And of course, when your teenagers are stressed, you as a parent, and maybe you as a parent are also caring for elders at the same time that you're caring for kids at home. That's a huge stressor. this whole shift in our society where people are living to like 90, 95, we've got a lot of folks out there who don't have enough money for retirement. They couldn't save enough because, who plans to live to be 100? Like almost nobody. We certainly didn't back in the 50s. But yeah, the cost of raising kids is very expensive. Caring for elders, puts a lot of pressure. But you're right. When people are stressed, some people will say, like, oh, I feel stressed. But a lot of people will get irritable and mean and inflexible. And, scratch the surface, you find that they're really feeling bad, for anyone who's been through Alcoholics Anonymous, like, don't raise your hand, but they have a pithy saying, hurt people hurt people.
Right.
And so, yeah, as soon as somebody's acting bad or mean or being a real jerk, kind of the first question you want to ask is there something going on with this person? And this is just the way it's coming out.
Right. Okay. All right. What things are on the rise beyond stress? So what are you seeing in your practice that's obviously stress is there, but what other kind of trends are we seeing that may affect a board or community?
Sure. I do neuropsychological testing. So I'm actually like the person who's doing the diagnosing. And we have a big uptick in anxiety and depression. We have upticks in this country. Our suicide rates are going up. In every other country, they're going down. This is really not good. Our rates of depression are extremely high, and one of the problems with depression is that it makes you physically unhealthy. And so you have people with mood disorders who are also physically, unhealthy, gaining a lot of weight, not exercising. And we have, of course, our veterans who came back from, the Middle East with a lot of brain injuries and PTSD. So yeah, things have gotten a lot more complicated. It's pretty much like you name it, it's on the rise. Anxiety, schizophrenia, dementia, depression. So this is a depressing show, of course, but, kind of the good news really is that, people are no longer kind of marginalized on the edge of society. People with disabilities can now take part and live in their own places and have families. And, if you look at it that way, it's kind of good.
Right. And I think that's the comment is in another slide of, 20 years ago, if you said I'm in therapy, there was something wrong with you.
Oh, yeah.
And now it's like, it's just one more coach, or I'm going to the gym, I'm going to my therapist. And it's almost a cool thing. Have you seen that shift in your practice?
Somewhat. I mean, wasn't it Walter Mondale who they exposed that he'd been a psychiatrist, or it was one of the presidential candidates? Yeah, it was a big stigma because if you went to a mental health provider, something was wrong with you. You were just expected to bootstrap your way through and force yourself through your problems, through force of will. But of course that, we know that really didn't happen. I watched my grandfather who was soused by, 3 PM. It would have been much better for him to go to therapy.
Right.
I do like this current trend. The real problem is, of course, that most of our country, the vast majority of the population, live in what are called mental health deserts. And that means that even if they can afford mental health care, they don't live anywhere near a trained mental health care provider. How has Zoom changed that?
I mean, Zoom has really changed that, hasn't it?
To a large extent, it has. But, when you don't see your buddies going to therapy, if you're a whole bunch of vets and maybe you get together to hang out with the other vets and nobody's in therapy, it's not going to really occur to you maybe I should try this. But if you see the other guys, are happen to live near a VA and they're getting counseling and that kind of thing, you'd be much more likely to do it too.
Interesting. All right. Okay, this is good. I am not depressed. I am excited about it because just all the agitating homeowners association meetings I've attended, you kind of step away from it and you go, that could have been handled so much better if just a little bit of thinking ahead of time, and that could have really gone well. But
in both of our professions, Jens, that old saying, a stitch in time saves 9. I mean, for you, keeping buildings from falling apart, for me, keeping people from falling apart, it's all the same.
Yep. Good point. Okay. Virtual world, the amount of virtualness. We found a study from 2019 and 21 that said people working from home nearly tripled, up to 17% of the population. And then we're hearing some studies coming out right now on the hiring side of things that say 40% of workers expect to work remotely. And so this whole come back to the office thing, 40% of the workers are saying, nope, I'll just go find another job and I will continue working from home. So we're dealing with, you used to go off to the factory or go off to the whatever, and you'd leave home and you'd come back. But now you're at home dealing with that yappy dog or your neighbors and just nonstop and not getting a break from it. Then of course,
it's kind of switched back to the way it was in the really olden days, because in the really olden days, women might brew at home, they might weave, men, they would like go, farm or hunt. And so, yeah, it's actually an interesting shift now because, then work was out of the home, but now it's coming back. And that's actually like kind of early 20th century. We're going back to that time when people were doing like piecework at home.
I wonder if the virtual, at least in my experience, the virtual sit at a desk world as opposed to out farming or chopping wood. If I'm physically working all day, I'll come home very tired and relaxed and nothing seems to bother me because I'm exhausted. But if I'm sitting at my desk, I'm bent up and I need to run laps. But yeah. Okay. Then of course, socializing on time or online, we talked about teenagers.
Miserable, toxic, and yet we love it because our brains are programmed to love it. It's just no accident that we're all addicted to our phones. The average person now is spending like 3 to 4 hours every day on their phone. And that's time that they're not chopping wood or socializing or, taking care of the kids or talking to their spouse. And so, we're pretty miserable right now. And it's kind of our own fault because, we go out and buy the phones, we buy the tablets. We've made them a part of life, but now we can't get the cows back in the barn. Right.
And how many of us text our partner from the other room to bring us another glass of water? And it's like, are you in the house? I mean, why can't you say something?
I do not know what you're talking about.
Yeah, that's right. And so we talked about the ability to get away with bad behavior. So keyboard warrioring, but it was interesting. We were involved in a board meeting and somebody challenged someone. And in previous days, when you're in person and you're challenged, you get the right to defend yourself. You can turn and run, or you can have a debate with them. But we just saw this person not wanting any of that and just turning off and signing off and poof, ghosting out into the internet. And it was like, oh, wow, you can totally get away with that now. Yeah. And how frustrating is that? I'm trying to get an answer from you and you just hang up on me. So it's really, So it was kind of like, oh, wow, this is not only do we need to worry about muting people who want to interrupt, we need to keep people on the phone or on the call that we need an answer from.
Yeah, but you're right. The virtualness of our interactions, we just weren't designed to socialize that way. We're really designed for face-to-face interactions, and we're designed to live in small groups. Most people back in the day, at the time of the Civil War, had never gone more than like 5 miles away from their home, maybe once. So we're communal animals. And when we have this sort of distancing where it feels artificial, it's very easy for people to say all sorts of nasty stuff and, racism and bigotry or just mean stuff that they would never say if I was actually sitting down at a table with you. I would never, insult you, but online people feel like perfectly free to, start a Twitter flame war and cancel people. And it is unfortunately bringing out the worst in us.
Right. Okay. Well, does she know what she's talking about or what? According to her LinkedIn. Well, according to her LinkedIn page, she's president of the Maryland Psychological Association. So, in Anchorman's terms, she's kind of a big deal. So if you want to talk to her some more, here's her email address, Dr. Resnik at resnikpsychology.com, and her phone number is there for you. So
I'm all the way in Maryland, though. And I think I'm the east side representative here.
Yeah, that's right. So coming from the Pacific Northwest, and we're just so glad that you are up at 7 p.m. talking to us. We really
I'm not that old, Jens.
That's right. Okay.
Not my dotage.
Yeah, that's right. We're Gen Xers. We're tough. Okay, repair work stress. Now we get into, hey, this is, if we're doing condominium repairs, we've got all this baseline or this underlying stuff. Now we're going to close the pool. Now we're going to close your decks. Now we're going to wrap your building in shrink wrap. Now the elevators are shut down for repairs, so I can't get outside. The parking lots are taken. We're, just on and on. And that's normal stress, we would call, of a repair work story. But I have some, a couple of favorite stories that I call it the white shrink wrap story. And this was a nursing home we were working on that wanted the opaque white plastic covering their scaffolding, and they were doing it in phases, so it didn't look like it was all under construction. And the daughter of one of the residents there came out, and she was asking, "Hey, is there anything you can do about the white plastic on the outside of the scaffolding?" And I said, "Why?" "Well, my dad, he's 85, and he keeps calling me every hour because he lived through the great blizzard of 1952, and he's looking out his window, and it's a whiteout. So he's calling me every hour to make sure I'm home safely and I'm not freezing to death in my car." And so I said, "Sure. What unit does he live in?" We went up on the scaffolding. He was there staring out his window into the white plastic, and we cut a window for him and put in some clear plastic and turned around, and he was just all smiles. But it was just amazing what, they can't quite put it. And I think that would be dementia. Is that some kind of dementia, thinking it was blizzard outside? But
yeah, I mean, that is the kind of
worry.
thing that, if your brain is, going through dementia, it's really hard to kind of figure out what's going on. People get confused, but I love that because the compassion there is so amazing, because a lot of people would have said, just stop that.
Tough, deal with it,
Yeah, really,
pull
who
your
cares?
drinks.
We got a job to do.
Right.
But the fact that you kind of put yourself in that guy's shoes and in the daughter's shoes too, because when you're caretaking for an elder, as I am, you watch them suffer when, so few people actually seem to really care about that. And
Right.
It means a lot when you can do that kind of thing.
Well, we like it just as a simple example of it. It's actually kind of simple once you just learn just a little bit more. I mean, it's very simple to say, is this something that I can do that takes really 5 minutes that really makes that person's anxiety go down? And it's, some people may have a giant $10,000 request, but figuring out what these things are and deciding what you can do as a board or a construction team to really, hey, we can handle this. This is easy.
Yeah.
So the other one involved a little bit more money, but it was interesting about, we had a resident that was just very concerned about having anyone in their unit. And as part of this, replacing windows, there's workers coming in and putting new windows in and patching things. And it's even, I look back and it's even, at least as of last year, it was a requirement. You have to give us a key so that they can come and go. And so I can just see that person really getting anxious about that. Yeah. And so they portrayed themselves as a hoarder. So you don't want to come into my unit. It's terribly disgusting. And nobody can come in. And so we finally made some headway in trust, and it became, let's see, I just flipped the slide here. Let me go back one. It was, we developed trust and realized that she had just a pristine unit and very wonderful lady, just very anxious about having people in. But if she could trust one person, that person would be the bridge. And so the board said, "Fantastic. Can you just be there with each contractor that goes into their unit? We want to help this person." And so even to the point of, after the job was done, this person needs something delivered and set up, and they called asking for us to be that person that would come in with the delivery team. And the board said, "Yeah, I know it's going to cost extra money. But it's not that much. We want you to meet them and take care of them." And so it was really cool that the board actually designated some money to, we can do this. We can pay a little service call. We can pay a little extra to figure this out. Are there other examples of maybe how boards could manage some of this? Is there some kind of budget or some kind of, I don't know.
I'm going to stay away from budget because that's your area of expertise. But the more that people know what to expect, the more anxiety goes down. Just like you gave the example of the point person, and the lady had actually met that person, so she was putting a face to it, and then it felt like, oh, it's just Steve or whoever is going to come by to help out. And that fear of having people come in, the worry about the noise or smells, all of those things, people, if they just know what to expect and they have a sense of like, when is it going to happen, and a reasonable expectation of like, how long do I have to put up with it? And I always tell people things are going to take longer than they actually are, because then I get some grace at the end if it does take longer. And, of course, if I turn out to be right and snowstorm comes and it takes longer, well, then nobody's upset with me. So that communication piece and getting buy-in. And if condo boards can have like a meet the contracting company night where they get like the tenants or owners and their caretakers too, because if you say somebody who's caring for an elder and maybe they come by 3 times a week, they want to know about that too, because they want to know, like, who's coming into the house and what kind of noises, and will my father think it's a blizzard? So not only providing that information and faces to go with it, but remembering that a lot of the folks with either mental health problems or disabilities, they're going to need a lot of reminders. So you may send out an email blast and say, the parking lot will be unusable for the next week. But if you can also remember, like, okay, some of our elders won't use email, some of our folks don't read very well or can't see, we're going to have to find alternate ways to communicate to that information to them, and probably communicate it a lot, like a week out, 2 days out, and then like right as it's happening. And then people are much calmer just when they know what to expect. So you can save yourself a lot of extra work by putting in the stitch in time saves 9 work by being proactive about communicating well.
Well, inviting the caregiver, that's brilliant, because the resident's going to be asking the caregiver likely repeatedly. And so if they're giving an answer instead of, I don't know, let me go find it, but they can reassure. And that's a great, we'll add that to our thing. Invite the caregivers. Perfect. Okay. All right. Let's go to aging population. And this isn't about ageism, but it's interesting. Again, when we were talking about this, doing a little show research, you get big organizations like National Institutes of Health or AARP that are preaching aging in place is the right thing to do. And it's like, oh, okay, great. These big groups are doing that. And it is keep people connected, keep them socialized. And so you couple that with, some of our quotes down here of, I'm going to stay here as long as I can. I'm going out here feet first, that sort of thing on a gurney, I guess. But it does give this, 10, 15 years ago, you should be in assisted living, but because of Uber now, I can get everything delivered, including myself. It used to be, if you could drive, you had some level of independence, or take public, transit. But now with a tap of a button on your phone, you can be delivered anywhere and have anything delivered to you. And so you can really extend out that. And then the rise of home care services, like you were talking about previously, it's really extending out, how long people are staying in condominiums. So, and then not to mention the fixed income budget, full service is 10 grand a month at a assisted living place now or more. And your condo units, maybe it's paid off, but it's not that expensive. And so I wonder how much budget is driving this, or, obviously the desire to stay with your friends and neighbors that you've probably lived next to for a while, and you're living on your own, and
I think budget's part of it. Certainly, I have my in-laws live in a senior community with assisted help. My parents are planning to age in place. They're the feet first crowd. But, this does create a lot of issues for condo boards and condo associations, of course, because, it's not a matter of ageism, but the reality is it's just that
Right.
all of us are going to have different physical and, support needs as we get older. And that's pretty hard if people haven't planned ahead for that. And almost nobody plans ahead for that, which is why AARP and the National Association of Home Builders, your guys, got together to create a program called the Aging in Place program. And they actually have a certification and training program where you have, aging in place specialists. So this might be a consultant, it might be an occupational therapist, who can go and evaluate a home, a building, the stairways, the elevators, and partner with a contractor. So, the people who actually get stuff done to make a home safe enough, eliminating things like, not enough lighting or a bathtub that, could cause somebody to fall. So, it can be worth it if your condo association has a lot of elders to bring in some of these people, or say, hey, we're getting, somebody from NAMI or the National Association for Mental Illness, or, a local representative, the AARP, they're going to come by, or maybe a local church, they're going to come by and they're going to talk about, if you're going to age in place, what kinds of things might you need? So again, bringing the caretakers in, because a lot of times elders, we all age very slowly, and we're not very good as human beings about planning ahead, saving for retirement, changing our house, getting rid of all this junk. So it creeps up on people a lot, or else they have like a catastrophic injury, like a fall or a dementia diagnosis or stroke. And so getting people on board with like, this is what we do here. We all, bring in the caretakers. We all keep our advanced directives on file. We all look out for each other. We get Meals on Wheels in, but, particularly with respect to the physical space, bring in some experts, because a lot of times they won't even charge you anything, because people, like me, care about this stuff, and get them, talking to the folks in the community, so that it doesn't become like a pejorative critical thing. It becomes like, this is what we're all doing now. All of us want the units to be safer, and the longer the unit is safer, the longer you can be independent. Nobody wants the scenario of like, falling in your bathroom. Nobody finds you for a couple days, you've broken a hip, and then you can't live in your house anymore and you have to give up your dog. That's a really sad kind of outcome for people.
So did you get these things to Ben? Is he putting them in the chat? These links to these places that'll come look at you? Because I think that's a fantastic idea.
So I can certainly give them to Ben. It's the AARP, and if you go on their website and you search for Aging in Place, so that's AIP, or CAPS, like CAP. So that's the Certified Aging in Place Specialist. And the AARP maintains lists of people in your community who have this particular specialization.
Gotcha. Perfect. Thank you. Super helpful. Okay. So we were talking about aging, just a little bit of what we're dealing, some cognitive abilities. So really repeating, communicating well, dementia, accessibility. So I'm used to the ADA. So as long as the American Disabilities, and we can get our wheelchair and get our walker and things like that. But you're suggesting, which I think is a great idea, going even deeper and saying, well, here's some things to start planning for, to watch out for, or just to kind of look at, as a board, look at your community and say, hey, we got about 40% of the people that would benefit from maybe some additional guardrails here, or maybe some additional lighting, or ease of getting groceries in and out of the car. So we're seeing those shopping carts around now more, or, just things. And so those are all great. Communication forums and information.
You're absolutely right, though, because the ADA things are pretty broad strokes, Right. Those are pretty easy. Like, I have ADA compliant bathrooms in my units, and boy, are they expensive, but I'm so glad I do. And, for a lot of elders, it's not going to be the big dramatic things that are going to make life so much harder. Ditto for people with physical disabilities or visual impairments or auditory impairments. It's going to be like those little things, like you mentioned, like how do I get my groceries in? How do I make sure there's enough lighting around? And again, a lot of times these things creep up on people and they don't recognize they need them until it becomes like overwhelming to get the repairs done, and they don't know how to do that. So for condo associations, when you have a community with a significant number of elders or disabled vets or people with physical handicaps, bringing in these experts to consult with the residents can really make a huge difference. And again, you open it up to everyone, so it's normal. Everybody's going to go. Everybody's going to talk about how their unit could be safer.
Yep, and how everybody's talking about how to plan for it versus just the board adding it to one more agenda bullet point. And great. And aging, the communication forums and information flow. I've had some 7-year-olds teach me how to do independent Zoom rooms and really be a whiz at that. But there are other, what's that Samsung One phone you have? I know it still works, but it just doesn't do what we're trying to text you these days. And so understanding that there's still lots of communication types and there's different ways of doing it, and how can everybody be informed of that? So, yeah.
And sometimes for our elders, they're still on, sticky notes and notepads and, little notice on the door, like, hey, remember that Charlie, the repairman, is coming by at 2. That can make a big difference between a person saying, oh, hi, Charlie, come on in, take care of the windows, versus there's a man trying to get into my apartment.
Yeah, reducing the stress. Yeah. So solutions, we've already talked about some of this stuff. And when you're thinking about, or when as a board, when you're thinking about people with diagnosed mental conditions, aging in place, remote workers, you're pushing 50-60% of your community needs some extra understanding, some extra communication, some extra support. And, I was just putting down a bullet, should therapists now be factored in as part of that repair process? We're seeing a lot more therapists at schools these days, and a lot, at college campuses. It's not just your guidance counselor that tells you to take this class. There's a whole therapy section as well. But your points of bringing in the carekeepers, bringing in some of these extra AARP, CAP and CAP and AIC. AIP.
I think they figured out that AIP didn't exactly roll trippingly off the tongue, so they were like, "What will everybody remember? Okay, let's just go with CAPS."
What does CAP stand for?
Certified Aging in Place Specialist, and that can be a person from several different areas of expertise, but they will typically be either contractors themselves or partner with contractors to make sure that the work is done properly. So I don't know that the therapists need to be part of the repair process, but it's certainly a nice move to get some consultants. Particularly, NAMI, for example, they don't charge. You can get a NAMI consultant to come in and talk about things like, okay, we have a big repair coming up. How are we going to notify our elders with dementia, or we have, several people, let's say with autism, who are living together, sharing an apartment. How are we going to communicate to them so that they're going to be okay with this? Because again, when it comes to either disability or mental health issues, it is always like a stitch in time saves 9. The more you communicate and get buy-in and reassure people, the less of the sticky, really annoying problems you have later on when you have unhappy residents who are upset and maybe even getting hurt because they didn't remember, like, oh, you have to take a different route in when you groceries, for example. But we definitely do need to bring the caretakers in, and a lot of folks will have caretaker involved. So it might be again, it might be a vet, it might be a person with autism, a person with intellectual disability, a person who doesn't see. There's usually kind of a support person, and that might be a relative, it might be a social worker, it might be a neighbor, but making sure we understand for all of our residents with support needs, who's their point person? Like, who would we actually call if something did happen, or if we really needed to get a message to them? That kind of openness is not something that people are accustomed to with condo communities, but I think that needs to be the wave of the future, where we're sharing more information so that we can keep people safe and informed.
Right. That's awesome. Okay, let's see. My buttons, getting anxiety when my buttons aren't working. Let's see. Okay, so need an inspection. Anybody that's been watching this show for over a year, I am used to sending out the education. I'm listening. My eyes are lighting up. I'm like, yeah, let's get some of those people in there. So I am out of my lane in this show, but I'm seeing you, my clients, going, wow, I wish we had there's something I can't quite put my finger on it. So I'm really glad we had Rebecca with us today. But if you want to set up a 15-minute call and get some specific advice about your building, click that link there or scan that QR code, talk about different ways of communicating. There we go. So this call is free, and yeah, use it. Okay. All right, doctor's closing thoughts. Then we'll get into Q&A, and we've got a couple in there already. If you have more questions, now's your chance to get them in there. But our boards are having to consider and plan for a lot more things than just repairs in their upcoming projects. So something for, and none of the stuff is talked about in the again, the governing documents, or I'm not seeing it. I'm not seeing it even in best practice information. And so I feel like we're really turning over some good ground here.
That's good.
And
yeah,
so,
our condo docs are all like from 1983.
Right. And so, our questions to you as a mental health professional and a board member, any advice to boards trying to be better? And maybe we can just sum up what you've said here.
I've served on quite a few boards. I mean, that's what middle-aged women do, right? We serve on boards. So, I'm seeing a lot of tension in boards of all different kinds, not just condo boards, between generations. And as you were mentioning when we were talking, you have some folks who are, really focused on, like, I've paid off my condo. Why would I invest in a whole bunch of new stuff? Why would I do that? Or they want to preserve the look of the 70s because that's, that's nostalgia for them. And then you have like some of the younger owners who, they're looking at another 30 years of living there. They really want to invest. And that kind of tension is coming up a lot. And the way we try to sort of manage that is we try to get everybody, focused on, it seems like if we, put a whole bunch of money into the roof and it's going to happen over the course of the next 10 years and you're 80, well, why would you care about that? But what everybody cares about is the property value and the niceness of the community in general. So, if I know that a repair is coming in 10 years and I want to sell my condo, that's a nice thing to be able to tell a prospective buyer is that, look, this condo community is investing in making it better. And that is definitely going to make them happy, as opposed to this condo board will never spend money and we're just letting this building crumble into the dust. So thinking about like the win-win across the generations, and the only thing people can agree on is that we all want our investment to increase in value. That's not a bad starting point.
Right. And we'll talk about, we call it the dark cloud in the real estate industry. The realtors who do a lot of business know that place, they never fund their repairs. They always do assessments. I think they also can talk about community vibe and say, I sold a building or I sold a unit there last year and my client told me that place is just toxic. You don't want to move in there. As opposed to, no, that place is very open, very understanding. They work with everybody, and to say they brought in, CAPS people to just help segments of the population figure this out. That says a ton. I would want to live there.
Yeah, exactly.
And so, think about what that vibe of your community, because it gets out, it gets out into the thing. And so attracting quality residents that you want in your community, as well as cranking your property values.
Yeah. Real estate agents know all the dirt. They're some of the best people to talk to.
Yes. And so anything else? And I want to pat ourselves on the back a little bit. We've had a couple of shows where we're talking about more community, more town halls. Don't make every meeting a vote. Build some time into, December's meeting is all about celebrating the holidays, or August meeting is a summertime barbecue picnic, ice cream social. Get people in front of each other, get people talking to one another. And that's another melody coming through here. In all our technology, it's still nice to slow down a little bit.
And that's one of the best ways to reduce some of that hostility and people assuming that other people are like being inconsiderate on purpose. If they've actually like run into each other, maybe they had some ice cream together. That's so much of a tension tamer than if they're like, that guy's always playing his music really late at night and he's so inconsiderate and I hate that guy. Well, you may find out that he's playing his music loud because he's hearing impaired and he doesn't hear it. Or maybe he's an elder and he just doesn't realize the TV is like turned up to 11. So yeah, you're right. I mean, they sound corny and they sound like, why would we bother in this day and age? But they really do improve like the whole vibe and people's willingness to like get along with each other.
Yep. Okay. Any other closing thoughts? We'll jump into Q&A.
I'm good.
Okay. This is awesome. This has been great. Okay. Let's jump into Q&A. I see a couple here. Let's see. Heather writes, this is me. What you're talking about. Me is all capitalized. Single parent, caring for a special needs preteen, plus my aging homebound father, all while being an association manager full time.
Wow.
Yeah.
We have a tough lady.
Yeah. You've got a lot of stuff going on there. So I'm glad we're talking about something that means something to you. And we have another question from Anonymous. How can I hold healthy boundaries, but show grace to difficult people during town hall meetings? How do we really know the difference between someone in crisis versus a friend's Karen? And so, yeah, good questions there. How do I hold healthy boundaries, but show grace? And then how do we really know the difference between somebody struggling or not?
That is one of the great philosophical questions. And Plato said something that is kind of bastardized to the effect of, be kind, for everyone you meet is fighting a hard battle. And yeah, some of the most difficult people in the world who just drive me nutty. A lot of times when you scratch the surface, you find that their behavior is so difficult because there is something going on with them. There's some really good books out there about like specifically how to deal with difficult people. You can get books like Never Split the Difference by Chris Roth. You can get one called Difficult Conversations. There's a lot of these sort of communication books, and they're usually, designed for like business travelers on a flight. So they're pretty easy to read. But I usually find that the tool from improv of always responding with yes and gets a lot of difficult people kind of turned around and less defensive. And so, basically that's just a simple trick where when somebody's really being difficult or trying to convince you of something that you just know is not a good idea, or they're just flat out wrong, when we agree with other people, even if we can agree with something they say, it's like the tension goes down. So I'll usually just very deliberately like take a step back and do a yes and, yes, you're right. The noise is absolutely awful and nobody can sleep and we're all really frustrated. And I would love to hear your ideas for what we might be able to do about that. So if we try to hit back with, arguing, even when we're right, people just dig in. I mean, that's just human nature. So the more we can like agree, even with some piece of it, let them have their say, mirror back to them like, okay, Karen, I'm hearing that you want your 5 Pekingese dogs to be able to roam free in the courtyard. And I'm sure they would love that. And now we're going to talk about, what rules will work for the entire community with respect to pet care. So it's always like a yes and, like that little judo move.
A little mirroring from Never Split the Difference. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Did you read that?
Oh, yeah. I've read both. Yeah. Very good books. Difficult Conversations and Never Split the Difference. Okay. Awesome. I think that's all the Q&A. So we go into a little bit of giveaway action. We've got some great stainless steel tumblers here and a box of Box of goodies. So how this works is there's 13 of you live. You are the people who have lived through this hour with us. So we hope you got something. And so here's some giveaways for you. And I'm going to pick a number. Ben, the producer, has your numbers in a list of how you signed up. And I'm going to go with number 7. So Ben will get in touch with you and get that delivered to you. So I'm seeing some things here. There's some questions popping up in the chat. Ben, can you put those in the Q&A box?
Probably all about like asphalt and drainage, though.
Right. Oh, wait, here we go. Okay, let me try to summarize this. I fully admit to having compassion overload, but it resonated badly with me that with those who need extra attention are attracted to condos. Is this because absentee landlords expect the board members or property managers to be the caseworkers and cleanup crew? I had kind of that same feeling. And, it's nice place to live. You don't have to do any maintenance, and it's better than some formal government run housing, and they don't have to live in my basement. I can make sure that. And so, yeah, I was kind of feeling some of your concerns there too, of why do we have to deal with it? Do you have some kind of response to that, Rebecca? As far as
I certainly hope I didn't misspeak and malign, unintentionally malign, folks who need some kind of support to live independently.
I don't think you did.
Okay, good. I'm really glad.
Yeah.
And I certainly understand that when you don't have any particular support needs yourself, and you want your condo to be awesome, and you don't want to have to, you pay your condo fees. You don't really want them going towards, Jenny, the alcoholic, or
some hidden things that now I have to deal with that I didn't sign up for. Maybe
that is unfortunately the way of it. And, that is the kind of, there's the great side of communal living, which is we all pool our resources. And so, hey, guess what? Snow removal is Jen's problem, not mine. That's certainly the pro, but, having lived in, my condo when I was single, it was, there were definitely issues where I was not always thrilled that you had people who were loud or rude or had a lot of problems that then, because I was part of a community, they kind of became mine. But, at the end of the day, we are our brother's keepers. And, it's kind of like the way we're designed is when we live together, we do, we get the good parts of it and we get the bad parts of it. I know that doesn't really make it any easier.
She follows up with a kind of a follow-on question of how can condo boards make the responsible people take responsibility? And so that's a fair question. We want to be our brother's keeper, but we didn't sign up to be their keeper. So how do we kind of say, that's cool, but you also have to step up and take a little bit more care here? Are there, have you run across tricks or tips or something like that?
I wish I did. We in my condo board, of course, we do fines, but a lot of people don't read the notices, or they're just like, yeah, well, it's too bad. And it is extremely frustrating to me as somebody who I like my condo to be really neat, and I like to keep it up and, check all the paint to make sure it's, painted and the screens aren't ripped and the plants aren't overgrowing. And it makes me so mad when I walk by somebody else's place and I see that they've got cigarette butts all over the ground. I wish I had an answer to this one, but maybe you get a lawyer in here next time to talk about things condo associations can do to increase compliance.
Right. Okay. Yeah, fair enough. All right. Those are great questions. And I was thinking, I kind of had that, I was like, wait a minute. I mean, is that fair? The fairness question, but I think that gets answered a lot of ways.
Yeah. The answer is it's not fair.
What's that?
It's never fair.
It's never fair.
Fair.
Okay. Did you know we have free resources for boards and managers? Go to learn.j2consultants.com/resources. You'll find over 300 videos on YouTube and lots of stuff in the PDFs and guides and all sorts of things. So please check that out there. And don't forget, we'll be back each month live at 3:30 on the last Tuesday of every month. You can scan the QR code. If you sign up to receive these, everybody who's in here is going to receive it. But feel free to pass it on to your friends. If this was worthwhile, have the rest of your board sign up or share it with others and talk about it. So a big thank you to Rebecca. You have made
Thanks
this
for having me,
topic
everybody.
and show so interesting. Once again, here's her contact information for you. And just really, this has really been a cool show. I've learned a ton. And so we really thank you for being a part of this.
Thanks, Jens.
All right. Thank you very much, everyone. See you later.